jump into our new series this morning. We're calling it Real. And there's a nice, fun little heart behind me. I love it. I think it's pretty cool. But we're going to talk about, over the next 3 weeks, we're going to talk about real friendships. We're going to talk about real marriages. And we're going to talk about real families. And I would encourage you, whether or not you're able to make it, if you can't watch online, we just poured a bunch of money into some online stuff, so hopefully everything is smooth and works well from this point forward. But I just want to encourage you, just make this maybe a priority over the next maybe 2 to 3 weeks to really be here and to dive in. I think next week, as we talk about marriages and we talk about what does it mean for a wife to submit to a husband, what does that actually look like biblically? What does it mean for a man to lay down his life for his wife like Christ did for the church? What does all that mean? What does it mean to be a real friend in a time where it feels like friendships are just plastic? And ultimately, in a world where families are being torn and ripped apart by every crazy thought going on and around the world, what does it mean to stand firm in a complicated and a difficult situation? And you got your Bibles open. Turn to John 13. John 13. Verses 34 and 35. It's going to be on the screen. And it says this: "A new command I give you." This is Jesus talking. And he says, "Love one another." Got it. I can do that. And then again, he says, "As I have loved you." That's a little harder. And then he doubles down and he says, "Now that I changed the game a little bit, I want you to love one another." And you're like, wait a minute, like, what does that actually mean? Like, what? And Jesus is going like, my love is a different kind of love than you've ever experienced before in your life. My love is unconditional. My love has no end. My love will go to the ends of the earth for you. The verse continues on. "So you must love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another." And so as we get into this series, I want to talk about today the first thing we'll talk about, which is real friendships. And I want to have a bit of a family conversation. Most of us here, this is your church, this is your family, we're connected, we're in. And we've been through a lot in this last season. Some ups and downs, some good times, some bad times. We've had some people come, we've had some people go. And we've asked probably a lot of questions of ourselves. We're looking at what other people are doing. Are they staying in Heart Church? Are they finding a church? What's going on? All those kind of things. I want to have a really honest conversation with you guys. I think that is appropriate. And I want to tell you this, that the resolve that Steph and I have at times, although looks strong and forward progressing, it is never the thing where we don't look at it and go like, man, are we doing something wrong? We look ourselves in the mirror and we go, this isn't fun. We wake up on a Sunday morning and doing all this, and it's really, really hard, and we're just like, I kind of just like to sleep in this morning. And that's just the truth of the matter. Because friendships are complicated. Friendships are really difficult. And we set out from the very, very beginning of this church to build this church not on personality, not to build this church on creative thinking or ideas, on hard work or effort. What we decided that we were going to do from the very beginning is we were going to build this church first on the Word of God, on His presence, but relationally. And that's a dangerous place to be. Building relationally has a double-edged sword. You go deep real fast, and you build relationships, and they're strong, and they're wonderful. The problem comes when there's strife. Those hurt a whole lot more than you thought they were going to. And you look and you go like, man, I don't like the way that felt when that person did that, said that, looked at me that way. And I'm going to be honest with you. Over the last few weeks, I've asked myself this question. Do I really want to keep doing this to myself? Do I really want to pour my heart out into relationship after relationship? Do I want to move my family 2,000 miles across the United States and give up everything, a career, retirement packages, health insurance, the safety, my kids' schooling, all of those things, and to lay it all down and go, Jesus, you asked me and I'm going to respond. But in the midst of all of it, it feels like you're just going like, again, that's not fun. I don't know those are real questions. Those are real things we felt, but I know you felt. Over the last few weeks, we've done our very best to lean in really hard and hear and listen and talk and try to figure out what's going on in you and to empathize and have compassion. But the one thing we never want to leave anyone doing in the midst of a difficult situation is to never sit with them and go, you know what? It sucks, it's terrible. Because empathy, and I'm going to talk about this here in a minute, empathy is wonderful until you can't move because all you do is empathize. At some point, empathy has to turn into leadership. Empathy has to turn into, I know it sucks, but if we stay in the foxhole forever, we're going to die. We've got to get up, we got to get moving, and we got to keep moving forward. We've got to take another step. I know it's hard. I know you're wounded. I know it sucks. I know it's not fun, but we got to take another step forward. We got to keep progressing forward. Why? And I'm taken back to this time and time and time again. Jesus saw people's brokenness again and again and again, and he was cut and he was hurt. His best friend, he knew, would betray him, but yet he loved anyways. And get this is the crazy part about this. He loved so well that the rest of the 11 that they spent every waking day with never knew that his best friend would betray him until the moment of. That's how well he loved. And as we move forward as a church, as we continue to progress, and we're adjusting and changing and trying to make, concessions for lack of team and things like that, the reality is like we're not stopping. The same word that came to myself, the same word that came to you when you were like, this is the church I think I want to be a part of, is the same word that's going to carry us forward. And I was thinking back this week as I was preparing for this message. And I was thinking back to last week, and if you weren't here, we had Seth and Diana, who are some missionaries that we're sending to the nation of Georgia, just south of Russia, and it's crazy what they're doing. They're a little like 1 month old, is about ready to go move all the way across the world and go and preach the gospel with their family in a world that just is like crazy war-torn nuts. And they said this. Seth came in with this word, and I was challenged by it this week. He said this. He said, in moments of strife and in struggle, it's easy to take your eyes off Jesus. It's easy to get your eyes off the word, your ears off the word that God spoke to you, and to focus on your issues and your problems and your concerns. When in reality, the same word that got you here is the same word that's going to see you through. The same word that planted you and rooted you is the same word that's going to cause you to be fruitful and to multiply. How does this have anything to do with friendships? Let me show you. I want to show you four different groups of people, and I'm going to kind of juxtapose them against one another. And the first one is this. It's in Acts 3, 1 through 10, and maybe we know the story, but it's the beggar at the gate called Beautiful. And I want to give you a little historical background on this individual. And that is this, is that, if you haven't read the story, it's simply this. There was multiple times a day that devout Jews would go to the temple and they would pray. And on this day, Peter and John were on their way to the temple, and probably like any other day, they passed by people begging for funds. They were typically crippled or sick or had some sort of infirmity that caused them to not be able to have a regular job. And this one day just so happened, I don't know if they'd met him before, seen him before, or whatever, they were walking past this man who was crippled from birth, calling out saying, "Do you have any money for me? I can't work, I can't do anything." And it says there in the scriptures, it says that every day he was carried. It's a pretty interesting thought. Who carried him? Why did they carry him? What was the benefit for them to carry him? And the reality is this, is when you look back at the prejudices and the way that Jews and Gentiles treated one another back in those days, is that if you had some sort of ailment or infirmity, you had a sickness, you had a deformity, you couldn't walk or things like that, they would literally just either oust you from the community or they would take advantage of you if you were profitable. And so probably what happened, a lot of scholars believe this, is that they would take that man and carry him to the gate beautiful day in and day out. Because at the end of the day, they would take him, walk him back to his house, and take 50% or more of his profits. And so they would use this man to make a profit off of his bad season, off of his bad hand that he was dealt. And I love so much what Peter and John do at this moment. They look at him and they go, I know your situation. I see past your situation. You don't really want money, you want transformation. You want healing and you want restoration. And I would say this, when it comes to our friend, we've got to be really careful who we listen to. Because there will be people in down, difficult seasons, and I've had them in this last season, who will look at me and go like, man, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? You shouldn't be doing that anymore. That's crazy. Why'd you move all the way over there? Why'd you give up everything? And they'll take advantage of you in those seasons. The friends that will look at your brokenness and they'll go, man, how do I get the best out of you in this season? How can I get what I need out of them? And I think one of the things that we have to do with our friends is this, is we need to understand the types of friends we're surrounding ourselves with. Again, hear me in this. We shouldn't ostracize people, but we should really know them. You see, the Bible was really clear because it actually categorized and labeled people, not for the sense of stereotyping them or typecasting them, but it was for a general understanding of a point where they could grow from. And I think to know the kind of people you're surrounding yourself with, are they just drawing from you? Are they constantly taking from you? You have people in your life that you know that are just like literally sucking you dry of your virtue and of your energy and of your will and of your time and of your resource. Like, do you have those people in your life? I don't say cut them off, but make sure you have healthy boundaries with them. Have a place where you go like, this is as far as I'm going to let this person in my life. I'm going to still be their friend. I'm going to still relate to them. I'm going to still connect with them. But if once you cross this line, I know that it becomes too much for me. What's the balance to this? The balance to this is this. In Luke 5:17 through 36, the gospel tells a story of another man. And I love this story. It's one of my favorites. But it talks about a man who, again, was lame from birth. Where these friends carried him to Jesus in a house. And they get to this house, and the house is like enthralled with people. There are just hundreds of people, so much so they couldn't even get in. And instead of looking at the situation and going, well, we tried, and walking away, they saw through the obstacles a way for a miracle. And so they carried this man, probably heavier than they wanted to, up the steps of this house. And they began to tear back the tiles and the straw and the wood and all the obstacles that were in the way, their own self-doubts, their own questions. And they began to, with ropes, lower him down into the front of the feet of Jesus. And there laid him down in front of the hundreds of people to see, because they were real friends who decided no obstacle was going to get between my friend and the move of God in their life. I challenge you in this next season. I challenge me in this next season. Find friends that are going to remove obstacles, that are going to remove challenges, that are going to remove excuses, and go, whatever it takes, you and I are going to get at the feet of Jesus. Whatever it takes, we're going to run into the throne, and we're going, I don't have all the answers, but I know that you're the source. I don't have what it takes, but I know that you're more than enough. Jesus, I desperately need you, so I'm going to lower my friend down. I'm going to help him in this broken season. Find for yourself someone that won't empathize, but someone that will lead you closer to the heart of God. That, to me, is the most special kind of friend. When I was 21 years old, my father-in-law actually planted a church in Idaho, and I was young and in love with this beautiful girl, and her dad was planting a church, and I was like, I don't care what it takes. I'm going to marry that girl. And so I followed him everywhere. I married her. And through this process of planting the church, I got involved with some creative stuff and some worship stuff, and we were in the process of trying to pick out a name for the church. And we got in contact with this guy through another pastor that was a creative guy, and he helped put together kind of our branding package and logo and name and catchphrase and all the different things that go along with it. And he and I interacted back and forth maybe a dozen or so times. And he's this really cool guy, and I really enjoyed the process of getting to like work with this guy. Well, the project ended and it was over, and I was like, all right, that's the story of working with, that kind of a situation. You work with a contractor and they move on. Fast forward almost like 10 years later, I'm sitting in a conference room at the previous church that we came from. And I hear this name of this person that's going to be joining our staff. And I went, oh, that's the guy that helped me with the branding package. And in that moment, I made a decision. I was like, that guy's going to be my best friend. And I just I don't know what it was. There was something about it. I just made the decision. I said, he's going to be my best friend. And we're gonna do this thing to life together. I haven't even met him yet. He's gonna walk in here. Guess what? Best friend. We're like, it's just gonna be that way. In walks Gareth Gilpin, and if you guys were there, if you guys were here, he was here a while back. Gareth walks in, and I literally looked at him across the conference room, and I go, best friend. And he's like, weirdo, And I was like, all right, fine, whatever. And I will say this: from that day, I wore him down. But Gareth has become one of my closest confidants and friends to this day. Just this week, he texted me, how you doing, man? Praying for you. Here if you need anything. How can I pray for you? What's going on? Oftentimes when I don't respond, he picks up the phone and goes, hey, best friend, why aren't you answering? What's going on? How you doing? When they came here, we drove down to Waco together. His wife and my wife took a car, and he and I took a car, and he goes, okay, tell me the real, what's going on? And he looked me straight in the eyes, and he goes, you need to make a couple changes. This isn't sustainable for you. Working like you're working, you're going to kill yourself if you keep going 7 days a week, 40 hours every single day of the day. I mean, just like you're going to grind yours because you got to make, and I just went, yeah, you're right. You need people in your life like that. If you don't have someone that's calling you on the carpet, someone that's looking you dead in the eye and going, how are you growing in your walk with the Lord? What's going on with your relationship? How's your marriage? What do your finances look like? You got to have someone that sits in a place, maybe not necessarily authority, but someone that you look up to and you go like, whatever, I just want to do what they're doing because they seem to be doing it more successful. Find a mentor, find a small group leader. Why are we doing small groups today? We're doing small groups today because life and community are best happened in small circles. And when you find that, it's amazing what happens when you meet someone, you talk to someone, you get done having that conversation, you're like, man, they're pretty cool. I like spending time with them. That's really fun. Like, maybe he and I would like to, grab coffee or whatever it is. You gotta find relationships that are gonna fill you. Next two groups of people is this. In Job 2:9, the story of Job, if you've never read it, is the story of a man God and the devil were having a dispute on favor and the hand of God being upon people's lives. And he challenged God that if he took his hand of blessing off of Job, that Job would turn back after the devil robbed him of everything and would curse God and walk away from him. Well, Job had a bit of a different plan. Job refused to ever curse God. Job refused to ever question the faithfulness and the goodness of God. And I love this story so much because when you read through it, you read this constant counterbalance of groups of people. You had Job who was going like, man, God, I need you. I don't know what to do. I'm confused. It's hard. I feel like you're distant from me. And he's got friends and he's got people in his life that are going like, man, what have you done wrong? You must have screwed up somehow because God doesn't look disparagingly upon people. He doesn't remove his hand of blessing for no reason. And he had his own wife, and this verse crushes me every single time. But it says this in Job 2, it says, then his wife said to him, do you still hold on to your faith? Curse God and die. I mean, come on, talk about your world falling apart. Not only do your best friends telling you to walk away from your faith, but you have your own spouse looking at you going just like, let's be done with the drama and let's go to eternity. And the counter of this is just what's crazy, is that you have this other friendship group and Jonathan and David, who's like the epitome of best friends. It's like bros all day long in the Old Testament. In 1 Samuel 18, 1 through 5, it says, as soon as David had finished speaking to Saul, his soul was knitted to the soul of David, and Jonathan loved him as his own soul. Guys, in this next season, the only way you're going to make it through, let's take it out of the context of anything else. The only way that we're going to make it through life, the craziness that is coming, the craziness that's happening, all the things that are going on in this world, is if you have somebody who doesn't get in the foxhole with you and takes bullets with you. You have somebody who gets in the foxhole and goes like, I'm done getting shot. Are you done getting shot? Let's move forward. And begins to move out from the place of being a wounded warrior into one who's a champion, one who's a victor, one who's going to move forward, one who's leading people closer to the heart of God. Because in that place, that, you guys, is true friendship. It's a Jonathan and David. David and Jonathan were like inseparable. David and Jonathan often looked out for one another. David and Jonathan often spied on one another when Saul divided the kingdom and looked out for one another. At the end of it all, when Jonathan and his father Saul died, David wept for his best friend because there was such a bond and a connection. Heart Church, we're not done building relationally. We're not. We're going to continue to. For all the benefits that come with it, but also the heartache that comes with it all. Because at the end of the day, what I know you can say and what I know I can say is this, is that I gave everything. I gave my whole heart. I gave my whole life. I gave absolutely all of me, and I have nothing to apologize for. I loved people deeply. I led them the best way I can, and we're going to continue to move forward. Amen? Amen. Let's do this. Why don't we stand to our feet this morning?